Hello, it's me at the beginning of the video. This is a re-upload of 3 videos that were taken down due to some bullshit. So it's Creatures 3, Volume 14, and Ouija. I just wanted to explain I'm not trying to hit you guys with like a hour-long video of shit I already did. But I gotta get this stuff back up. You can definitely tell where I'm at now compared to when I did Ouija, which is the last like 13 minutes. I'm like shouting the story. But anyway, here we go. This is a rather short encounter because I was riding in a car and basically saw it as we drove past it. I've been by this site hundreds of times since then, but have never gotten out and walked around the area. Maybe I should. This encounter changed my life. When I hear other people's stories, I never discount them. Why? Because I know what I saw, and who am I to question someone else's experience? It was evening, and my family and I were coming back from Chesapeake Beach, Maryland from having dinner. I was 15 and in the back right passenger seat, chilling with my brother. Riding along, I'm just looking out the window, and there's a little road that merges onto the main road on the left. So as we merge, we're picking up a little speed. We're going maybe 30 miles an hour, and you have to cross this little bridge and it's really bumpy, so we slowed down to about 20. Once we did that, I look up ahead, and about 75 yards away, I see something standing on the wood's edge off to the right a little. It had both arms on a tree, just standing there, meaning its right arm was on a tree about shoulder height, and its left arm was on a tree about shoulder height. It was about 7 feet tall, maybe even taller. It had a wolf-looking face, only larger like a dire wolf from Game of Thrones. It had really broad shoulders, very muscular arms, a barrel chest, and it narrowed the rest of the way down the abdominal area. It was dark brown and the hair was medium length. It locked eyes with me. It knew I saw it, and it saw me. I saw it for a good 10 to 15 seconds because of how far up ahead I first noticed it moving around, and how slow we were traveling. Its eyes followed mine the entire time. I said out loud to my family, "Did you guys see that thing?" Obviously, they were like, "See what?" I kept talking about it, and they started getting annoyed with me and told me to shut up. So that was my encounter. My family still doesn't believe me, and most other people think I'm crazy or lying, so I rarely tell anyone about it. But it was real. It was there. A friend of mine owns a few hundred acres of land which he rents to farmers to grow crops. As you can imagine, the area is rather quiet. Not too many houses or traffic around these back roads. His house was currently under renovation, so he was staying in a trailer around the back of his property. Nothing but potato field with an old decrepit barn poking out. He said around 1 a.m. he was woken up to his dogs going nuts, scratching at the trailer door. When he went to let them out, he was surprised to see bright yellow lights behind and inside the nearby barn. Thinking it was trespassers, he let his dogs loose and went to bust out his rifle. He said as he was loading it, he heard his dogs go from barking to yelping and whining. They came barreling back into the trailer and proceeded to hide under the table. Thinking these people heard his dogs, he stepped out of the trailer and fired 5 rounds into the air, yelling as loud as he could. He got a response when the lights around the barn grew incredibly bright. He admits at that point that he got pretty freaked out. He said that he stood there for a bit, staring at the lights, when he noticed 2 beings casually walking across the field towards the barn. Apparently, when he saw them, he was hit with a mixture of confusion and fear. He describes them as humanoid, pale white, tall and thin, having very small heads in comparison to their bodies. He also notes that they must have been 6'5", with most of that height being leg length, and also they didn't have hands. Their arms seemed to end in stubs. He stated that they moved very strangely. Their upper body seemed stiff and locked, but their legs moved very fluidly, almost bringing their knees to their chest. Understandably, fear took over him. He fired at the beings, which just made them completely stop moving. Then he noticed a third one to his left, very close, but walking away from his trailer. He went back inside for his handgun, and the light outside vanished. He sat inside his trailer with silent dogs until morning. He didn't check out the barn until 2 days later, and found nothing strange there. No burn marks, no holes. All was normal. When checking the fields, he also found absolutely nothing. He told me that he was freaked out for a while afterwards, but nothing strange has happened on his property since then. He also likes to add that not too far from his property is a large piece of military land in the woods. It's completely fenced off with barbed wire and sports nothing but vents sticking out of the ground. The rumor is it's a site used for listening to and broadcasting messages into space. I'm a firm believer in cryptids. The one I saw radiated pure evil. The fear I felt while in the presence of that creature was very unnatural. It's something that has always haunted me, and I figured if I talk about it, perhaps maybe someone else had witnessed it near the shorelines. At the time, I'd only ever heard about Bigfoot, which was because of Hollywood movies and TV shows. I just assumed it was something made up to sell movie tickets. I lived near the small settlement of Morden, Nova Scotia. When I was a kid and school was out for the summer, my only rule was to be home before dark. My mother never asked any questions, just as long as I was out of her hair for the day. My friend Sean came from a similar home, and so did my friend Carissa. We all had to put up with abuse and alcohol in our homes, so for us to be able to spend the day together was a real treat. We had decided the day before that we would go trout fishing. There was a river out back of Sean's that we could follow all the way to the bay, and we lived several miles apart, so it would take us a good hour to hour and a half to meet up. We knew it would be an all-day adventure, so we set our alarms for 6:30, and I packed a frozen full 2-liter bottle and a few granola bars to share with my 2 friends. It was a beautiful sunny summer's day, and once we all met up, we began walking the field behind Sean's that led to the forest. We fished our way down the river, exploring as we went along. We hadn't paid attention to how long it was taking us, and we soon realized that we'd never make it to the shore before the tide was in again. We had planned to make it to the shore while the tide was still out, so we could walk the ocean floor and go to the steps that lead up to the ocean cliff. Sean and I had done this a few times, and had a lot of fun doing it. When we turned around and began following the river the direction we came, we all started to get a bit panicked. None of us had brought a watch, so we couldn't keep track of the time. The sun was beginning to set, and I didn't want to get stuck out in the woods in the middle of the night. My friend Sean was being a bit of a dilly-dally, and I didn't blame him because his dad had been home drinking. If his dad wasn't passed out drunk by the time he got home, that meant Sean was in for a bad time. I told Sean that I didn't want to go home, I just wanted to get out of the woods before it got too dark, so he finally began picking up his pace. For some reason, I kept sensing something wasn't right, like a feeling of dread had set in. It was something I had never felt any of the other times we had explored the woods. We began walking pretty quickly, because we knew we had less than an hour's walk before we could hike up the riverbank. I asked my friends if they sensed what I sensed. I said that something doesn't seem right, like we're being watched. Sean, of course, said I was nuts. Carissa told me not to scare her. Sean was teasing me about seeing things, but I kept reassuring him I wasn't joking. We carried on for some time, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Just as we got to the spot where we needed to begin hiking up the bank, I heard a twig snap high up in the tree branches. That's when I noticed the forest was dead silent. I knew forest life did that when there was a predator around. Sean reassured me that it was nothing. But that's when we all heard a louder snap from the treetops, followed by a loud rustling sound. It sounded like something had moved quickly through the trees. I was expecting a lynx or some kind of wild cat. I hadn't thought that it might be something far worse. I began peering through the trees, trying to get a look at what was causing the noise, when I spotted it. The first thing I noticed was its dark body on the tree. The second thing I noticed were its eyes. They were glowing yellow. It was approximately 30 to 50 feet away up in a tree. I was speechless. It looked almost amphibious, and its body looked to be dark green. I was able to make out that the monster had humanoid features, human-looking arms and legs. As the creature held onto the tree, I could make out that its long fingers were clawed and webbed. As I stared at it, I came to the realization it was staring back at me. Fear had me frozen solid. It wasn't until Sean came over and grabbed my shoulder that I was able to break my paralysis. I lifted my finger to point at it, and Carissa screamed at the top of her lungs and began to run. That's when the monster jumped to another tree, closer to us. Sean grabbed my hand and began pulling me. He had to yell at me to get me to run. I could hear the creature crashing from treetop to treetop. We got up the steep bank, and we were running through the trees when I tripped on an ancient barbed wire fence that had rotted to the ground. As I was getting my footing, Sean had turned around to help me up, and could see the monster up above us. He yelled out, "Leave us alone!" We began running as fast as our feet could take us. Once we got out to the field and there were no more tall trees over our heads, a feeling of relief came over me. It was short-lived. We heard a loud, high-pitched scream. I don't know how to describe it, because I've never heard anything like it before or since. All I know is that the monster was pissed. The blood-curdling scream rang out from the forest for what seemed like eternity. As soon as the first scream stopped, another long scream rang out. Birds began flying out of the forest. We could see Sean's house off into the distance, and Carissa was already halfway there. Once we all got there, we were in disbelief. We'd never heard of such a creature. We quickly walked to Sean's grandmother's house, who lived right next door. When we got there, she knew something was up. She asked what was wrong, and Sean told her we had seen a monster in the woods. She asked what it looked like and what it did, and he told her everything that happened. She laughed at us and said we'd seen a wild cat. I asked for a piece of paper and a pen so I could draw what we had seen. That's when his grandmother demanded that we all draw what we had seen in separate corners. Once we finished, we brought our pictures to her, and to her surprise, we all drew the same creature. Shortly after, we told our friend Ryan about the monster we had seen. Ryan was our nerdy friend who didn't like leaving the house much because he was addicted to his computer. When we told him, he said it reminded him of the chupacabra, but he said that was only in the southern United States and Mexico. He went to his computer and dialed up the internet. After searching for a few minutes for features we had described to him, he said your monster looks like a Dover demon. Looking through pictures, we knew that that's what we had seen. The Dover demon was first reported in Dover, Massachusetts, back in the late 1970s. Massachusetts is a maritime state, just like Nova Scotia is a maritime province. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to believe that the Dover demon migrated along the coast until it got to Morden, Nova Scotia. After all, the Dover sighting was 25 years before our sighting. All I know is that what I saw was pure evil. It wasn't very big. It was approximately 4 feet tall and very thin, but it had distinct muscle mass, and it was very fast. I think the only reason it didn't attack was because we outnumbered it. I do believe if Sean hadn't come back for me, it would have pounced on me while I was down. Sean told me when he came running back for me, he saw it jumping to a tree right above me. He yelled at it because he thought it was going to jump down. He didn't know what else to do. All 3 of us have since moved from that area, and we've never seen anything like it again. We even worked up the nerve to try to hunt it down when we got a bit older. Sean's parents were away for the weekend, and we each armed ourselves with one of his father's rifles. We thought that if we shot and killed the thing, we'd go down in history as the first people to bag a monster. Silly childish thoughts, I know. We never saw it again, but I will never forget those yellow eyes. It was the middle of summer. Heat lightning was flashing over the lake. Several friends and I were at this dude's beach house. It wasn't very late, maybe an hour or two after sunset. We all went outside onto the second-story back deck to smoke. I was watching the lightning. The house was only a few 100 feet away from the shore, but the walk to the beach takes a minute because there was a grassy dune between the two. So a couple of us noticed a light beam from a flashlight coming over the dune. It was scanning the grass, like someone was looking for something. Most people on the beach at night don't use lights. It's actually pretty bright all night on Lake Michigan, after your eyes get used to it. The light sweeps by something in the grass, then it shines back onto it. What was illuminated was very strange. It appeared to be a naked guy crawling around on the grass, but it had elongated arms and legs. It was moving kinda fast, crunched over. It only lasted a few seconds, long enough for all of us to see it. Then it scurried off really fast, and the flashlight shines directly at us. It stayed pointing at us until it went out after a few seconds, so we were all like, what the fuck was that? We were asking each other to describe what the hell we just saw, and we had all seen a weird stretched out naked guy. I wanted to go down there. I wanted to see if we could find it, but no one would go, and they were creeped out and wanted to go back inside. I was very disappointed, but I didn't want to go alone. The only explainable thing it could have possibly been was a drunk, gangly naked guy, but I don't think so, because it looked abnormally stretched, and with the light pointing at us and disappearing, it freaked everyone out. It was something strange. My husband said it looked like something from a Marilyn Manson music video. Two friends and I decided to go camping in New York. There was a dirt road that runs right down the mountain, and then there are a lot of smaller off-road tracks that have some good camping spots. I don't know if you're really supposed to be camping there or not, but there's a lot of fire pits, so people do it anyway. We set up our tent and get a fire going, have a couple beers, and the sun goes down. We all looked at each other because the woods got really quiet. You couldn't even hear crickets, just dead silence. It felt like there was a lightning storm coming, because you could feel the static in the air, and all the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Jamie started saying that he felt like the air was humming, and then all of a sudden there was a real deep bass noise, and this bright light in the distance that lit up the whole woods. It looked like the light from a really big firework exploding for the first few seconds, before it split up into 3 or 4 other lights and shot back down into the trees. We could see all the lights glowing out in the woods, and then there was a big gust of wind and they were gone. It smelled like it had just rained, but it never did. We didn't really know what to do, so we just waited it out, but nothing happened. Eventually, we went back to bitching about our women. At about 2 in the morning, we decided to turn in, so Jamie and I went to go sleep in the tent, but Dan said he was going to sleep by the fire. An hour later, I wake up because Dan is in the tent shaking us, saying that there is something big watching the camp. He said it was about 50 feet from the fire, and he thought that it might be a bear, but that it was standing on 2 legs and bobbing back and forth, like it was trying to get a better look at him. While he was talking, we heard a loud scream. I've never heard anything like it before as long as I've been alive. It sounded like a pig being slaughtered, but deeper, and so loud it made your ears ring. The next thing I remember was hearing 3 or 4 things come running towards the campsite, and the embers from the fire kicking up and landing on the tent. The things, or creatures or whatever they were, kept running up to the tent and grunting, and then running back into the woods. Every once in a while, one of them would scream again, and pull on one of the tent poles, dragging the whole tent a foot or 2. The tent was collapsing on one side, and we didn't know what else to do, so we just started screaming as loud as we could. After about a minute, everything was quiet again, so we made a run for the truck as fast as we could and hit the gas. When we were leaving, we saw one of those fuckers in the headlights standing in the road. I told Jamie to gun it, and the thing straightened up and puffed up its chest. This thing was huge, had dark gray hair all over its body, except the front. That hair was white or yellow. Its face looked like a dog, but not exactly. It didn't even move when we drove at it. We had to swerve around it. We drove back down the mountain to the highway and parked the truck in a gas company parking lot. We thought about calling the cops, but we'd been drinking all night and couldn't afford a DUI, so we just waited for the sun to come up and sobered up. When we drove back up to get our stuff, there wasn't anything there. Everything was gone. No tent, no cooler, nothing. We told some of our friends what happened, but nobody would believe us. They said we were probably hallucinating because we drank so much. I don't know if it had anything to do with the lights, but it was the weirdest damn thing any of us had ever experienced. That was no bear. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. Also come follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CoreyRhino. Be good to animals, even people. See ya. Mr. Interval? Mr. Interval?
Where am I? Whoa, what's up with my voice?
I regret to inform you that you were in a terrible crash. We had to rebuild your entire body. Using state-of-the-art technology, we've given you several upgrades. You're the world's first cyborg. I don't know how you feel about that.
I'm a cyborg?
Okay, try blinking your eyes. Okay, now touch your nose with your index finger. Good.
My CPU is a neural net processor, a learning computer.
Okay, sir, none of that is true.
Please put down your weapon. You have 20 seconds to comply.
Okay, buddy, are you done? We have shit we have to go over.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and stand up for me. Okay, now jump straight up as high as you can.
Woo!
Okay, good. Okay, now punch through this brick wall. Very good.
Shit, I used to do that when I was a regular guy.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
Sure. Okay, now check this out. Push your right temple. That's night vision.
Oh, sweet.
Now push the left. Actually, hold on. Nurse, come on in. Now push your left. X-ray vision.
Oh, this is the best feature so far.
Yeah, we thought you'd like that.
Yeah. Wow, you really did hook me up with some upgrades. Thanks, Doc. Put her there.
Ah, my fucking head!
Oh, whoops. Hey, nurse, can you come back in?
I was 14 years old. My parents were gone for the weekend and my brother was at a friend's house. Being home alone isn't really what I'd call fun or enjoyable, but that afternoon I was watching TV in the living room. I got up to go to the bathroom, but as I was passing the front door, I was stopped by the jiggling of the doorknob. I watched it for a good 30 seconds before I went over to look through the peephole. It was an older man, maybe in his 40s, in a black hoodie, with a bored look on his face. I decided to call my neighbor Lake to come out before I opened the door. Lake walked onto my porch as I did. The man told us he was lost and needed directions somewhere. We clearly didn't believe him, but we told him where he could find wherever he was going. The man walked down the street and out of sight. After that incident, I decided to get out of the house for a bit, so I headed to the nearby gas station to grab some snacks. It took quite a while to go there and back. I was surprised at how dark it was on the way home. But when I could see my house, I noticed the front door was wide open, and my dog was barking. Once again, I called Lake over to help me check it out. We couldn't find anything, so we called the police to see what they could find. I was still shaken up over that random guy, and I knew he was back. I waited in my room for the police to show up, and Lake waited downstairs. When they got there, they searched the entire house top to bottom, and when they came out, I was terrified. They came out with an older man wearing a black hoodie, escorting him to a police car in handcuffs. The police told me he was hiding under a bed in the upstairs bedroom, which was my room. What's even more chilling is that the policeman asked the man, "Why were you hiding in this house?"
I've been planning this for 4 days now.
The man said. Planning what?
I was going to strike tonight.
I think it's about time that I finally grew the balls to tell this story. I think about it constantly, but part of me felt like if I never confronted it, typed it out, or said it out loud, then it'd be like it never happened. Unfortunately, life doesn't really work like that, and trauma doesn't just disappear no matter how badly you fight the thoughts. The memory is still so crystal clear, like it happened only moments ago, despite it actually occurring around 12 years prior. I relive it a lot in my dreams, and every single time I pass a wreck on the road. It can be a little rear-end collision or something major, but the dented metal, metallic crunch, and splintering sound of shattering glass overpowers my hearing. It feels like I'm sitting upside down again, seatbelt digging deep into my skin, and thinking what the fuck just happened. And that's the thing, I still have no idea what happened. It's not a case of the car came out of nowhere, or they slammed on their brakes, I didn't see it coming. It's more like, no matter how many times I've replayed that night in my head, I can never come to an explanation. I was driving back from my parents' house, despite their pleas to just stay the night and leave in the morning. I was 21, fairly used to staying up at night, and even more used to the back roads I'd take back to my place. I hadn't a worry in the world. The drive was only about 45 minutes, and it was highly unlikely that I'd see another soul on the road. I remember the brightness of the sky, the vibrant white of the stars, and thinking about how it was never this beautiful in the city. The tree branches that lined the road reached in towards me, and though it'd be eerie to anyone else, I found it comforting. I cruised at 50 miles per hour, windows down, enjoying the country air and the sounds of the night. I was reminiscing, passing different turnoffs where my brother and I would go smoke and drink with some buddies. The first time my youngest brother drove a manual and stalled it right near the mile marker. The transmission in that poor Camaro never stood a chance. Then suddenly my dash lights went out, then came back on and went out again. I brought my foot off the accelerator, easing the car to a slower speed. I crept as I waited for the lights to flicker back on. When they didn't, I pulled off to the side and turned the engine off. The sounds of the woods around me seemed to be deafening without the noise of the engine, and the shine from the stars seemed too dull behind the canopy of leaves. Now, I'm not a car guy. I know jack shit about what to do in a situation like this. So I did the old, have you tried turning it off and back on? Can you imagine my shock when it actually fucking worked? My heartbeat slowed when all the lights came back on, and the beam of my headlights pegged the emergency lane. Except something was different. There was a set of footprints that hadn't been there before, and I'm 120% sure of that. I'm not the most observant person in the world, but I definitely would have noticed a set of maroon-red footprints where I pulled over. They extended forward, so I put the car in drive and merged back over onto the road. As odd as it sounds, They looked wet, glistening, dripping from one to the other. The further I got, the bloodier they seemed to be, like the person was bleeding out from the soles of their bare feet. I grew more worried and was freaking out, feeling the thud of my heart all the way in my ears. The trees felt menacing now, instead of comforting. I sped up, noticing now that the footprints had turned into skid marks, the way it would look if someone was bleeding and being dragged over the pavement. I checked my rearview mirror, being cautious, but knowing I would have seen the approaching headlights had someone come up behind me. The road was completely empty, but when I looked back at the road ahead, I saw the scariest thing I will ever see in my entire life. It was a woman, well, more like a girl, hunched over in the middle of the fucking road. It felt like time had slowed down. Her hair was wet with blood, matted, mouth agape like she was in mid-scream. Her eyes were completely black, even with my headlights shining directly into them. Her skin was gray, stretched around protruding bones. She didn't look alive. She didn't look dead. She looked mangled, her clothes ripped to shreds. Her limbs were at angles they shouldn't be, and after what felt like forever, her head jerked so hard to the side that it looked animated, and my entire car was filled with a blood-curdling shriek. And I don't know what happened. My body was on autopilot. My foot stomped the gas, hard, jolting the car forward. The steering wheel spun raggedly. The sound of rubber sliding on asphalt melded with that unholy scream. Time felt still. I could feel my breath burning my lungs, the blatant fear raging down my spine, the sickening motion as the car tilted to the side. My stomach was flipping, and everything was muted. My mind flashed with images of the footprints, of the blood, of the girl in the middle of the road. Then the way my hair floated as my body turned upside down, the distant sound of bending metal. I hadn't realized I was closing my eyes until I fluttered them open, trying to focus when everything was blurry. I finally focused on the windshield, the way the cracks spiderwebbed out, the splintering sound as it continued to break. And then everything went black, the high-pitched scream still in the background. When I woke up, I was being yelled at by a man in white. He sounded frantic. I felt the pressure of the mask on my face, and the cool feeling of air down my throat. My body was numb. It was hard to concentrate on anything. And then I realized I was in the back of an ambulance. From what I know now, I was being transported to the hospital, in and out of consciousness. It felt unreal, like I wasn't there. I woke up to the beeping of a monitor, a nurse standing over me. I managed to croak out a miserable sentence. "Am I okay?" She looked at me. "You will be, just relax," she said. I still felt numb. "What about the girl?" "What girl?" she asked. I tried to swallow. I remember that I couldn't really feel that either. "Sir?" She looked me in the eye, pure confusion on her face. "What girl? You were the only one there." I found out later that a passing car had called 911 and was screaming about an overturned car. They had pulled me out and laid me in the grass. When the police and ambulance arrived, they began loading me up and checking the scene for anything that could help them figure out why I had lost control. They said I must have overcorrected, sending my car sideways. There was no mention of a girl, or of any footprints. No blood that wasn't my own. Everyone thinks I probably hit my head, and that I was remembering things incorrectly. But that's not true. I know what I saw, and my head was fine. I had some other parts that were shattered and broken, but not my mind or my memory. I can't explain what happened to me that night, but I'm hoping that typing this out and sharing it will relieve some of the stress and pressure I have felt ever since. Be careful out there. Drive safe. And if you see bloody footprints, make sure you turn around and go back the way you came. Back in 2006, a friend and I went to see the terrible horror movie Stay Alive in theaters. We were 14 at the time, so we took the bus since neither of us drove. We sat in front of some middle-aged lady, and a few minutes into the ride, she starts tapping us both on the shoulder. We turn around and she says, "Which one of your sisters is Jessica?" We told her that neither of us had any sisters and turned back around. She then taps us again moments later and asks the same question. I could tell she was mentally ill. I tried to be polite and told her again that we don't have any sisters. She then starts talking to us as we're facing away from her, saying, "Don't lie to me. I know what you did. You tell your brother what you did to your sister." My friend and I are looking at each other like, what the fuck is going on right now? Then it takes a turn when she busts out with, "Which one of you got your sister pregnant?" I can't remember my response, but I think I was kind of stern and just told her we don't have sisters and asked her to stop talking to us. For whatever reason, we didn't move seats. I think I was afraid she would have attacked me or something had I gotten up. The lady starts tapping me on the shoulder again and would not stop, so I finally turn around. When we made eye contact, she said, "Look at my face. Do you see death in my face?" This creeped me the fuck out. I turn away from her again, and she then leans forward in her seat and sticks her head between our heads. And she starts moving her lips really fast like she's yelling at us, but she's not making any sounds. Then she sat back down, and she had gotten the attention of some other homeless guy who was sitting across from us. She looks at him, then points at us. Then she sticks her hands under her armpits and starts flapping her arms like a bird. All the while, she's still moving her lips ridiculously fast without talking. The homeless guy starts laughing his ass off. Then I'm looking around the bus, trying to see if anyone else notices what's going on. The only other person was some kid in the very back with a skateboard. He's laughing like crazy too, and I could see he was missing a few teeth. It made me feel like we were being taunted in some Deliverance type shit. We finally got to the transit station, and that was the end of that. I was scared to even get up, but I did. I remember I kept looking back to see if she was following us, but thank God she wasn't. There's a mountain that I live near, that I collect stones on, here in Oregon. Quartz crystals, tourmaline, gold, you name it. It's an old mining area that has abandoned mine shafts and dilapidated old buildings from the 1800s. The roads up this mountain are treacherous, taking quite a while to get up if you take the wrong ones. One day my roommate and I decided to go collect stones up there. It was spring and the weather was great. We hadn't seen signs of other people at all. A quiet day in the national forest, as kids were still in school. We made it up the mountain and set up camp. We poked around the area, finding a few crystals here and there. And even though I had been up this mountain many, many times, this time something felt off. This crude camping area with its makeshift toilet was extremely remote, but I had never felt strange there before. It was like we were being watched. That feeling you get in your subconscious that you cannot seem to shake. But I did, and we carried on with our day. At around 9 p.m., after preparing a fire and some food, we decided to head to bed. The tent was about 50 feet from the car, and that made me feel comfortable. I've hiked in super extreme remote areas for many years now, and have run into some sketchy situations. It's not comforting when you're scared and hours away from a vehicle. The forest can become overwhelming under those circumstances, but this time was different. We had the car right there, so what could go wrong? I had just about fallen asleep, and my roommate was already out like a light, when the noise caught my attention. It sounded like the brush just inside the tree line shaking. We were surrounded by forest all around, except for a boulder field to the back of our tent, up against a massive mountain peak. I sat there listening to the bushes shake, wondering what could be out there. It's not unusual to have elk, or small animals like opossums come into camp and walk through. But this was something big. What happened next made my blood run cold. I hear the bushes stop shaking, and something takes a step onto the ground. It had a loud step. I know that sounds strange, but that's the best way to describe it. It then proceeds to walk right up to the tent. What made me lose my cool mentally was that it was on 2 legs. I could identify right away that this was not something on 4 legs. I laid there, as still as I could, and listened. All I could hear was a heavy breathing. Then it all went quiet. Again, I hear the bushes rattle, and it walks up to the tent again. The bizarre part is I never heard it walk back away. That messed with my head. After a few minutes of silence had passed, I jammed my roommate in the ribs with my elbow and whispered for him to listen, as uncomfortable making a noise made me feel. After a few minutes of him looking at me like I had lost my mind, the bushes shook, and the whatever it was walked up to the tent again. My roommate's eyes got big. We sat there for a good 20 minutes, listening to this thing walk up to the tent over and over, but never walk away. Then it walked over to the crude bathroom and started shaking it violently. Both of us now sitting up in our sleeping bags, debating in our minds what to do next. After a good 45 minutes of all this going on, everything got silent, so we just sat there for a while. That's when I turned to my roommate and said, "We need to go." I had had well enough by this time. All we had for defense was a small axe in the tent with us. I grabbed it, and we ripped the tent zipper down as fast as we could, without it getting stuck, and hightailed it right for the car. My roommate started it and immediately turned on the headlights, illuminating the entire area. No signs of anything. We take off down the mountain in the pitch black. The entire time, I'm expecting whatever that thing was to come running out at the car. I've camped up in this area since a few times. As I kid you not, it is one of the most beautiful, pristine, subalpine areas you'll ever see. But I slept in the car, as I will never sleep in a tent again. The natives used to call this area Skookum Mountain, and said it was haunted by the evil god of the woods. This guy I dated in college told me about this happening to him in high school. He went to school in a small town, but lived even further outside of the town in the country, by 30 or so minutes. The whole neighborhood had dirt roads and trees everywhere. You can't see the other neighbors' houses because everyone has at least 5 acres, and the houses are all spread out. Anyway, he was with this girl after school, so they're just driving around doing what kids do, like getting fast food and stuff. When it got dark, they drove over near his house to hang out some more. But being teenagers, they felt frisky. They decided to pull over on this dirt road in the woods. The property the dirt road was on was 500 acres owned by his best friend's family, so he was allowed on it and not trespassing. The family just used the land for hunting, so he figured it would be a private place to park and get down with this chick, without getting in trouble from his parents. He turned off the car and they crawled into the back seat, where they are surrounded by the blackness of the woods. She started going down on him, and he was just enjoying it for a while. Eventually, he started looking around. I don't remember if it was from boredom or he wanted a distraction to not finish, but he noticed a red light reflecting onto the windshield. It would blink and then disappear. It kept distracting him because it wasn't like a normal light. It faded slowly, rather than blinking on and off completely. And he also didn't remember ever seeing it before, so he was somewhat worried something was wrong with his car. Once he finished, the girl said she saw the light too, but she thought it looked like it was coming from outside the car. They crawled back into the front seats, and he started the engine and turned on the headlights. They saw a redneck standing a few feet in front of the car, smoking a cigarette, watching them. The cherry was the tiny red light, which was all they could see in the dark. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story, or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. Be good to animals, even people. Sup!
Coming this summer. He stands 6'4", weighs in at 320 pounds. He beat up his father when he turned 3 years old. And now he's coming to the silver screen. Knuckle Howard is Phil Chooch, who is the Berserker.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. Okay?
You forgot to say please. Ooh.
This isn't your dad's action hero, but he pretty much says the same shit.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!
And if there's one thing you need to know, never make fun of his voice.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Yeah? You sound like my daughter. I didn't see it, but I heard it was awesome, said Sherry, mother of two. I fell asleep in the theater. I loved it. Raves Tim Johnson from the Sunny fucking News. I would rather have my eyes gouged out than see this movie again, said some liar.
I'm gonna take this right foot, and I'm gonna whop you on that side of your face. And you wanna know something? There's not a damn thing you're gonna be able to do about it.
Get ready for the best goddamn movie you've ever seen. Berserker.
I'll be back. If there's a sequel.
So when I was 14, my parents transferred me to a private Catholic prep school. I was not happy about changing districts, and I had a really hard time making friends as a young teen. A few weeks into the semester, I was invited to a sleepover with 3 girls I knew from English class. I didn't really know them very well, but my mom made me go anyway, in an effort to help me adjust. One of the girls, Kathy, brought tarot cards and a Ouija board to the party. I had never played with a Ouija board before. I was assured it was nothing more than a board game, and because I was goth, I would enjoy the experience. The 4 of us, Zoe, Kathy, Jess, and myself, set up the board in the late afternoon, in Jess's bedroom. Right from the start, the board was crazy active. I was really skeptical, and didn't want to play if the other girls weren't going to take it seriously. They swore they weren't messing around. The board continued to spell out things like hello and play over and over before we could ask it any questions. We finally asked if there was a spirit with us and if it had a name, to which it responded Hector. This was when Jess began getting anxious. She told us that when she was about 5, she had an imaginary friend named Hector. I was still skeptical, but officially creeped out. We asked if he had any other spirits with him. He said yes. We asked if he knew their names. With no hesitation, the board spelled Marie. Now this time, Zoe broke down crying and didn't want to play anymore. We stopped playing to console her, but she was very worked up. Apparently, just 3 months earlier, her grandmother Marie passed away from cancer. Since we were only classmates, there was no way any of us could have known about that event. Zoe refused to play with the board after that, despite our attempts to get her to say goodbye. Kathy, Jess, and I continued to play without Zoe, which proved to also be a mistake. The place where Zoe was sitting felt ice cold compared to the rest of the room, and the planchette kept changing places on the board without us touching it. Later that evening, while we were all eating dinner, Jess's 5-year-old brother began telling us about his imaginary friend, Hector. We asked him if he knew about his sister's imaginary friend when she was a kid, and he said no. All this paranormal talk reached Jess's mom, who quickly sent us home, and we were never invited back. I go to art school in NYC. I love art. I love creativity and making things come to life. It's fun, relaxing, and rewarding. I also like the occult. I don't actually believe in anything, but I like the power that the occult has with other people, especially tarot cards. I also like religions, the idea of a god or gods, and life after death. It's fascinating, but to me, that's all it is. So here we are, my final project in my sculpture class, and I have almost absolute freedom to create whatever I want with the help of 2 other classmates. So I take the lead and suggest a Ouija board. I never tried one before, but I always wanted one. It's exciting, and my teammates don't seem to care. They just want to finish the semester. Now here's the thing. I had to sell this idea to my professor, that it isn't just a board game, and that this is actually an art piece. How can I do that? Shock value. So I told him that this piece won't be an ordinary Ouija board. It will be a special one, created mainly to attract demons and incredibly evil spirits. My professor was ecstatic. He's loving the idea and gives me the go-ahead. For the first week, I plan it all out. I put real effort into the typography, background symbols, wood, and composition. I end up having it done on a laser burner. I'm proud of how the surface turned out. This was done about a week ago. I don't remember anything weird the first night, but it was the second night that I started having trouble sleeping. It's the end of the semester, and I have a few big art projects due as my finals, so I heard it's normal to be stressed. I've had problems sleeping before, but this seemed different. It hasn't really gotten better since. Even one of my classmates commented on my eyes yesterday, saying I have bags under them. I disagree. Anyways, that first night, the reason I couldn't sleep was because I thought I saw something. I have a couple of monitors on my desk, and when it starts to get really late, I drift from schoolwork to watching stupid videos on YouTube and just surfing the web. I don't know what I clicked, but when a new browser popped up, there was a figure in the reflection sitting on my bed, right behind me. I turned around and there was nothing there, which I'm happy about, because my dorm room is really small. Like if there was really someone there, they would have been less than a foot away. No time at all for me to react fast enough. I looked back at my screen, and there was nothing. I had a new feeling in my gut, to research Ouija board history. I spent the rest of that night and morning just looking up facts and strange stories. Did you know Ouija boards have only been around for approximately 130 years? I always thought they were ancient. They really did start as a fun board game. I did my best to get some sleep. Another weird thing is, I haven't been dreaming. I usually dream of something or another. I wouldn't say I'm confused when I wake up with nothing to remember. It's just awkward. 3 days ago, I added my first demonic symbols with a wood burner. I found a list of them and burnt them into the corners. Pure aesthetics, but my friends do think it looks cool. That same night when I brought it to my room, I think I heard a whisper. Another thrilling experience when you're tired and your mind plays tricks on you. It was really late, and I know there are other artists on my floor. But it was a weird whisper, and it sounded like it was right in the room. I convinced myself that if the Ouija board was real, I haven't even used it yet, so how could spirits find me? I haven't even made the planchette. I stayed up late again, doing more research, looking up scarier stories and experiences. That night, something else happened. I'm a very deep sleeper when I actually fall asleep, especially here in NYC, with asshole drivers always honking their horns, and drunk people singing and yelling at each other on the streets. Don't even get me started about the construction that takes place early in the morning. But something woke me up. It sounded like a girl screaming outside. Like right outside my window, as if she was falling. I kind of panicked, because I honestly thought someone fell from the building. I knocked over my plant to open my blinds and looked down at the street, but there was nothing. 2 nights ago, something really gross and disturbing happened. It could have been another hallucination, but I honestly didn't want to find out. I started seeing blurs and motions out of my peripherals, but I figured it just comes with being really tired. Something did happen though. I want to warn you all. This might just be too gross, and it's pretty personal. It has to do with going to the bathroom. I was using the toilet, taking a dump in my tiny dorm bathroom. Seriously, it's so small my knees hit the wall. It's annoying. While I'm finishing up, wiping myself, I felt a weird clump. It almost felt like it was moving. So before I threw it into the toilet, I looked. I could have sworn it was a big spider covered in shit, and it was still moving in between my fingers. I freaked out and threw it in. I could still see the dark clump as the toilet paper soaked around it. I was waiting for the spider to struggle and climb out, but it wasn't moving. It was such a horrible feeling. Was it even real, or am I just seeing things again? When I realized I'd been staring into the toilet for 5 minutes, I just started laughing. And as soon as I flushed and left the bathroom, there's the Ouija board, leaned against the wall, witnessing the entire thing. Yesterday I was hanging out with some friends in the common room. I told them about the scream I heard outside my window. None of them had heard it. I started joking about my Ouija board being so powerful, it was letting me contact ghosts already. Then this girl I didn't even know told me, "That's not funny at all." I thought that she was just another weirdo that actually believes in ghosts and demons, but it wasn't that. She informed me that there was a suicide in this building last year. A student jumped. It's something the school has been doing their best to keep quiet. I never knew about any suicide in our school before, especially one that happened just last year. It gave me shivers talking about it, and I don't think I got any sleep at all last night. Today I walked around the city, taking a break from my projects, but now I'm back in my room, and my Ouija board is here to wish me good night. As I write this, I still have another 2.5 weeks to finish this project. Even with all this crazy stuff happening, I'm happy with how my Ouija board is turning out so far. Be good to animals, even people. So. Once again, I'm at a party wishing I stayed the fuck home. And this music sucks. Hey, what are you guys doing back here?
We're gonna play with Luigi board. You wanna play?
Sure. I don't believe in all that bullshit. This is a weird looking Ouija board, man.
No, Luigi board.
Oh, okay.
Is there anyone here with us right now?
No way. You're doing that.
I'm not doing anything. Are you moving it?
I'm not doing it.
If you're really here, then say something.
Luigi time!
Ah! Holy shit!
Oh, mamma mia!
Ja, snämma, Bergsbus, Rish.
I looked into the toilet paper.
I also like religions.
Is there anyone here with us right now? Is there anyone here with...
My stomach went.
There's someone with us.